After you're finished working your wax and you're satisfied with the way everything looks, you can use this product called Wax Bright. So it makes the surface shiny and it gets rid of any fuzz that might happen from the filing. It's a little stinky, so I wouldn't recommend buying that and using it at home. But if you have an outdoor place to work, or if you can do it in your workshop with good ventilation, it's a really nice thing to do. All right, now we're going to let that dry, and then once it's dry, then we will get the sprues on and get it ready for casting. So the next thing that we need to do is take the wax ring, and attach it to the sprue base, like this one here. So before we can attach it though, we have to take the sprue, which is the part that connects the ring to the base, and then the vent and the wax pattern, our ring, and weigh them all out. So we're going to do that on this scale that's calibrated in grams. So let's get that zeroed out, and then we'll put all the screws and everything on there and see how much that is. And then we're ready to attach the wax to our sprue base. So we're going to use heat to do that. So I have an alcohol torch, which I can light right here. And then I have some wax tools. Right here. Wow, that's kind of a roaring blaze I have going on my torch. You don't really need to have it quite that high, but there it is now. So I heat the tool and I slide the tool between the wax and the sprue base, which is also filled with wax. So just hold it there momentarily, and then it should stay. So I'm going to use some damp towels to wipe that off. All right, and then this part can be a little bit trickier, and that's attaching it to the wax pattern itself. So we want to attach it to the thickest part of the pattern, and also the part that doesn't have any texture. So you can see that my ring has got a lot of texture on the outside, but the inside that isn't going to show, it's totally plain. So that's where I want to connect this. So I'm going to put this at a slight angle so I can just connect it on the inside. And this needs to be up higher than the base of the sprue by a little bit. And the reason I'm putting it at an angle is because that way I can reach to the inside with my sprue right there. All right, so I'm going to use a different tool for this. I'm going to heat that tool a little bit like we did the other thing. Position the two parts together that I want to connect. And then put the hot tool between them and hold them both together for just a few seconds. Don't move this around or you'll get a weak joint and it might come off later. All right, so now you can see how that's placed there, just at a slight angle. And then we're going to add the vent to the very top. So this vent is just to let air go out, although some metal will usually flow into it. That's metal we'll have to cut off later, so we want to keep this kind of as small as we can so we don't waste any metal. But you definitely want to have a good connection there. All right, then I have to attach it to the sprue base. So I'm going to go back to my larger tool for that, heat that up, and then just slip it underneath the sprue. And hold that down for just a second. It's not the sprue, we're working on the vent now. Slip it underneath the vent and hold it down. All right, so like that. So I'm noticing I've got kind of a weird thing going on with my vent, so I'm going to try to smooth that out a little bit right here. The sprue and the vents are actually what's going to be the inside of a tube. So the sprue carries metal through its tube, and the vent carries the air out. So you want the metal to have a really nice smooth ride so it doesn't add a bunch of air into the mold that might create holes and make a bad casting. So we want to smooth all that out. Any place where it's rough. And then we can also make the connection a little more round too. Right at the base. To help it enter better. All right, so pretty simple for this kind of ring. Now, there are other rings where your sprue might need to be divided into a Y shape so that it fed different parts of the ring at the same time. So this is a pretty simple form, so it really doesn't need that. But each case is going to be a little different, so definitely want to check with me, draw a little sketch of what you have, or show me the actual thing, and then I can tell you how the spruing and gating should be arranged for it. All right. Now, the next thing to do is we're going to take this solution called No Bubble, and its purpose is exactly that, is to make no bubbles happen later. So we're going to get a brush and brush that No Bubble on to the outside of the piece. And let that dry. And when that dries, then we are ready to put it into the mold. So once we have our pattern attached to the sprue base and vented, now we need to find the appropriate flask. So the flask is going to go tightly into this rubber part of the sprue base. It needs to be at least 1/2 inch taller than the tallest part of our wax pattern, and it should be about 1/2 inch all the way around in terms of the distance between everything and the edge of the flask. So you take the flask and then you carefully insert it into the rubber base. So this flask actually could have been a little bit shorter and we would be okay. And you want to measure this height of the flask. So this was 3 inches, and also the width. So it's about 2.5 by 3 inches. So, and that's important because we have a formula for how much material we're going to use to fill this flask.